Cern Basher has decided to return once again because he keeps getting good numbers on this channel. Is that the main reason, Cern?
It is, Randy. It is. Yes.
That's what I thought. And the audience loves you. They keep saying things like, they put there's emojis like that. I don't know. Do you know what those even mean?
No, because I'm not strong. I'm not tough. So I'm not really sure what that means. I think somebody last week called me a hard case.
A hard case.
I think that's a compliment. I don't know.
All right. Well, I understand that you have many things with which to regale us. Do you know you don't make those changes anymore? My publisher on my last book, the editor on my last book, uh, reversed all of those dangling participles that I didn't do, two dangling participles.
Hmm.
You are going to regale us. Yeah, I forgot how the participle would have worked now, but I'm sorry. I'm really my mind is everywhere this morning.
All right. Well, let's move forward then.
All right, good.
So let's start with this. It was a nice day the other day in Sarasota, and so I took my truck to the park. Is that a normal thing to do, Randy?
It is a normal thing to take. Did you have since you have ASS, you could then walk it, right?
I don't believe I have that on the truck yet.
Oh, you don't have it yet. Okay.
Yeah, but we do have the end-to-end highway stack for
Yeah.
FSD, so
Yeah.
that's a bonus.
Excellent. Excellent.
As you can see, I'm not doing a very good job keeping my truck clean.
But you're not supposed to.
No.
No.
I figure that my refrigerator hasn't been cleaned in a while, so why would I clean my truck?
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. So, as you know, we've got a little event coming up,
Yes.
and we talked about this a little bit last week. And I decided, in the theme of We Robot, to do this for Elon's companies.
Ah.
And this particular image kind of went viral this week. I believe I have something like 800,000 views of this
Really?
on X.
Really? Wow. Good for
Kind
you.
of surprised me.
Yeah.
But I took the idea of We Robot,
Yes.
and by the way, with some input of some other folks. It's not just my thinking here.
Ah.
And then overarching is kind of all of Elon's companies. It's we progress. We're making progress.
Yeah.
You could say we humanity, but actually, a lot of the things that Musk's companies are doing actually benefits all species on Earth,
There you go.
right? If we're going to be improving the environment. So we progress, and it implies growth, right? Progress is growth. And for Tesla, we robot, that's fine. We understand that. The cars and the robots, that's great. For 𝐄𝐦𝐚𝐢𝐥, it's we think. I originally had we compute, but ultimately they're going to be trying to build a brain, right? I mean, an artificial brain.
Yeah.
So it's we think.
Okay.
X is we connect,
Yeah.
right? And X endeavors to be an everything platform, everything app.
Right.
And so it's connecting people in communication, but it's also connecting buyers and sellers
Yes.
at some point, and
Yes.
connecting payments and all that kind of stuff. So
Mhm.
that's why I went with We Connect.
In fact, Elon has even talked about connecting people and creating a dating app.
There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yep. And then SpaceX is We Explore.
Mm-hmm.
With Starlink, a lot of people wanted me to put Starlink on here separately. I've staunchly resisted that request because Starlink right now is part of SpaceX.
Okay. All right.
So I'm standing firm on that until Starlink is spun off.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Once that happens, I'm happy to put Starlink on here separately.
Okay.
Okay. Because Tesla might spin off, companies at some point too.
I hope so.
Right. So we explore for SpaceX. I think ultimately it'll be more than that. They'll be manufacturing in space, and of course with Starlink, and who knows what else.
Yeah.
Neuralink, we enable. People that don't have the ability to move their limbs, and it enables them to regain some control and so on. They can use a computer or other devices. Blind sight might enable people to see again.
Right. Right.
right? And then if we all get a Neuralink in our heads, it will allow us to compete with AI.
Yes.
And then the Boring Company, as much as I like We Dig, I went with We Move because that's ultimately what you're putting through the tunnels is you're moving stuff.
Uh-huh.
The idea is not to dig. That's not the purpose of it. It's to move stuff.
Yes. And We Bore would have been so boring.
Well, it would have been good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been good. So for some reason, I got an incredible response on this. A few people disagreed with a few words and had their own ideas, and that's great. I
Sure.
appreciate that.
Sure.
And then at the same time, I decided to put one together from an investor standpoint.
Oh.
And here's how that looks. For Tesla, we hold. For the others, it's we want.
For all the others. Uh-huh.
So
Yes.
had some fun with that. It was kind of unexpected that this was one of my best performing posts of all time.
Yes. And what about this one? Did this one do well as well?
Not as much, but
Not as
I don't think people saw it. I was surprised. I would have thought this would have done reasonably well. It did, but not in a comparison with the first one.
Right.
It's funny what takes off on X and what doesn't.
Right. I agree.
There are so many times when I say this is a great post, everybody's going to love it, and I get 2,000 views or something, and
Right.
it disappears. All right, let's move on to more serious things.
Okay.
What do you think about this?
Yeah, I've done a couple of stories on this. And in fact, there was another story this morning. I don't know if you saw it, where it says there's a rumor about an order that McDonald's has placed with Tesla for 100,000 robots.
Well, that would be very smart of them.
It would be very smart of them.
Yeah, I tend to believe that this has nothing to do with Tesla's event.
Wow.
If it does, that could be fun. If
Yeah.
it doesn't, I think it's a brilliant sort of guerrilla marketing campaign.
No kidding.
Or it might have just been completely unintentional.
Yes.
You know, the folks at McDonald's may not even be aware of Tesla's 1010 event.
Well, there was, Elon followed some marketing executive at Tesla. I mean,
Yeah, I think that was some time ago, though. I don't think it was in relation to this,
Okay.
from what I saw. Now, Elon did respond to this 6 minutes ago. Actually, this is last night,
really?
I think. Now,
Wow.
with the crying emoji, of the laughing crying emoji.
Laughing. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it would be surprising. And then last night, we got this from the executive office of Tesla. This is an old image, I believe, from Japan, if I'm not mistaken, where they had a very cyber spoon-like image with this flurry.
Yeah.
Right. And so he's saying, so you're saying you want a cyber spoon? So I think they're having fun with this now inside Tesla.
Indeed.
I would be surprised if there is anything, although, like you said, Optimus looks good dressed up as a McDonald's employee. Actually looks pretty natural.
Did you put this one up yet on X?
No, I didn't. This is actually somebody else's. So it's already out there.
Okay.
Yeah. There are certain things when you see them, Randy, you wish that you had thought of. And this was one of them.
Yes, that's right. There's one.
Yeah. Now, I did do this. And this is an idea from a friend of mine. His name is Steve Simpson. And he came up with the idea of that every Tesla should come with a Frunk bot that I named Assistus instead of Optimus. It's a smaller bot that folds up in the frunk and basically is there to serve you when you park your car, opens your doors, carries your bags for you. If you're a really important person, it'll roll out the red carpet in front of you and may even announce your arrival. So this is something else I expect to see now in 1010 to add to the list of expectations.
A mini bot.
A mini bot called Assistus.
A mini Wii.
Yep, there you go. But actually, wouldn't that be cute? I think every single kid in the world would love this idea.
Yeah. I think there would be new organizations formed, however, that would be sad about him being cooped up in the boot.
Yeah, there could be some issues with that.
Right.
It'd be a growth industry for nonprofit organizations forming around that. Yeah. All right. By the way, all the images of Cybertrucks in today's shows are from me.
All right.
Yeah. This is the front light bar under certain conditions. It's kind of beautiful.
Not to be, you're not going to let us know those conditions. It's kind of a secret.
It's a secret to my photography trade. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Using the iPhone.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. The best piece of photographic equipment in the world, I understand.
It's right.
I mean, it has 3 lenses. It must be great.
That'd be great. That's right.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to some very serious matters.
Okay.
Yesterday, Adam Jonas released a report on Tesla. And the first part here was kind of interesting. He says, it's hard to believe how fast 9 years can fly by. During Tesla's Q2 2015 call, I asked Elon Musk what I thought was a simple, straightforward question. Is this a real business opportunity for Tesla, supplying cars to ride-sharing firms? Or does Tesla cut out the middleman and sell on-demand, electric, autonomous mobility services directly from the company on its own platform? After a 6-second reply or pause, Elon replied, "That's an insightful question." I gave him an out saying, "You don't have to answer it." I bet he regrets that. So that's interesting. This possibly might have been the genesis of the idea of the Robotaxi service. I don't know. That'd be an interesting question to ask Elon sometime.
Well, and an ongoing debate within the community as to whether or how many vehicles will be sold by Tesla versus how many will be put out on the system for their own profit. Yeah.
Long term, none should be sold if you're just worried about maximizing profits.
Right.
Now, obviously, there are other considerations.
Sure.
But yeah, from a financial perspective, Tesla should stop selling vehicles at some point.
On the other side of the coin, people talk about that all the time. I've been in industry. The industries that I've sold in over the years have had as many as 5 layers. So when you're an exporter, for instance, exporting to Europe, a lot of times you're exporting to an importer who then sells to a wholesaler, who then sells to a jobber, who then sells to a retailer, who then sells to the consumer. So you have all those layers in between. Well, you say, well, why wouldn't you just get rid of all those layers and have that manufacturer sell to the consumer direct, especially today, because you have Amazon. And that has happened. Most manufacturers today do sell direct on Amazon, but they still sell through those other channels as well.
Yeah.
So commonly, I think we have mixed distribution systems because there's benefits sometimes to having on-hand participation at various levels.
Yeah, and I think it's also highly unlikely that we see a 100% autonomous fleet anytime soon. Even in the most optimistic scenario, people are still going to want to buy their own vehicle.
Right.
Autonomous ambulances and police cars, fire trucks, I doubt it. I mean, eventually, if you could have that, then you wouldn't need any stop signs or traffic lights.
That's right.
All the vehicles would just communicate to each other. So maybe we get there eventually, but it'll be a while.
Yeah.
So Adam kindly put a little bit of his model in this report, which Sawyer Merritt shared on X. And he showed this chart. And he's showing the yellow line is the miles per car driven per year. And he's starting off at 50,000 a year, which is, by the way, about a 25% utilization rate.
Right.
But pretty low. It's like 165 miles a day, I think.
Okay.
And growing that up to about 70,000 miles a year, which is about a 35% utilization rate. So still pretty low utilization numbers out to 2035.
What do most, I was going to look this up the other day, and maybe you have this information. How many miles per hour average do Uber and some of these get on their vehicles?
I don't know what the number is. Okay. In my modeling, I assume about 25.
25 miles per hour.
Okay. On average. Now, in some situations, that's too high, and some that's way too low. So I just use that as an average.
Okay, and the utilization rate that you're talking about takes into consideration both waiting time during the time when there's a lot of activity and also slow time, such as the middle of the night.
Yeah, the utilization I'm talking about is anytime the vehicle is moving. Doesn't mean that it's earning a fare.
Right.
So if it's moving to reposition itself,
Right.
then it's being utilized.
Okay.
So if it's only 25% utilization, that means 75% of the time it is just sitting somewhere.
Okay.
Okay. So, and then the blue lines show his estimate for the size of the fleet, and he's starting off with 1,000 vehicles in 2026.
Okay.
Now, that flies in the face of what Elon's talked about, where
Yes.
he's just talking about awakening the fleet.
Right.
Right. And Adam has that going to 158,000 by 2030. And then, you know, a little higher numbers as it goes out, 1.7 million by 2035.
Right.
So a pretty slow ramp, frankly.
Right.
Right. And I would even go as far as to say it's a ridiculously slow ramp.
Yes.
Extremely, extremely conservative.
In fact, you could take the number on 2035 and put it over on 2026.
Possibly. Possibly. Yep. All right. And then he provides this information, which is a whole bunch of numbers. And so what I did was took that and made this. And I compared his model to mine.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I had to make accept certain number of his assumptions to make our models comparable.
Okay.
So, for example, he's got revenue per vehicle of 105,000 a year.
All right.
I basically then rejiggered my model to come up with revenue numbers kind of in that ballpark.
Because you would normally have had.
It would have been, I assumed, a lower cost per mile than what he was assuming.
I see. Okay.
Okay.
Cost,
now, initially,
cost or revenue?
Sorry, revenue per mile.
Lower.
Yeah, cost to the customer, revenue for the company. Yep.
Okay.
Now, of course, with any robotaxi model, the revenue per mile might be higher initially. Then, as the fleet grows, as the service demand increases, the cost can come down. This is a snapshot in time of 2030. So his numbers may be reasonable. We'll have to see.
And what revenue per mile are you figuring for this?
I think for him, it worked out to, actually, I can show you in 1 second.
Okay.
Just to preview that, it was $1.76 is what he assumed.
Okay. And you assume?
Mine worked out to 157.
Okay.
Okay, which was higher than what I had before.
Okay.
And then he assumes, you know, all these expenses. So fleet leasing expense, depreciation, amortization, cost, right? The cost to purchase a vehicle. Now, I skipped through it pretty quickly, but he assumed the cost of the car was $45,000.
All right.
So I don't know if he's thinking we're going to run this fleet with Model Ys. Does he not understand that Tesla's going to make a purpose-built robotaxi?
Right.
Right. That may cost them $20,000 to make or less. So I don't know. So that number is very high. So compared to me, he's quite high there. Financing costs similar. The cost to charge similar. Vehicle maintenance, he's got a much higher number than I do. Maybe he's assuming we're running this with gasoline powered cars. I don't know.
Well, yeah, yeah.
Tires, he's got a very low number.
Yeah, no kidding.
I have a much higher number because as you drive all these miles, you're going to burn through tires quicker maybe than you realize. Now, if it's not human-driven, tires actually may last a lot longer in a robotaxi world. They're not going to be accelerating from 0 to 60 in 2.6 seconds.
Right.
Right.
Parking and tolls, $4,900. Holy man.
Yeah, he's got some big numbers for some of these things. And then he's got this licensing and fees category.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that's for. Who's Tesla paying this to?
Yeah.
Are they working with Uber? Is that the assumption? Is that there's an agreement with Uber?
Huh.
And Uber gets 20% of Tesla's revenue? I don't know.
Right.
So I took that out. I don't understand what that is in my model. I don't have that.
Sure.
He's got other expenses of about 9%. For me, it's closer to 5%.
What do you think those are?
There's registration fees. There's I forget. I had 3 or 4 other items that went in there. Right now, I'm forgetting specifically what they are.
Okay, accounting.
Yeah, there's the cost of payment processing.
Yeah, yeah.
EV registration, gas taxes, just
Sure.
different things like that add up.
All right.
And then he gets the gross profit per vehicle of about 55,000 and a 51% gross margin.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm at about 78,000 and an 80% gross margin.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, the revenues here, he's assuming just revenues from offering the Robotaxi as a service, no other revenues from delivery, connectivity, entertainment, advertising.
I see.
All those other opportunities, right? Because this is an autonomous platform
Right.
with which you can layer services on top of. He's including none of that.
Right.
And my number is in this scenario as well. I've stripped all that out.
Okay.
Okay. And then he's got SG&A of 15%. Okay. Now, Tesla's SG&A right now as a company is about 5.5% over the last 12 months.
Yeah.
So it's a very high number. Now, maybe you could say in the early years, the SG&A would be high because it's a, ramping business. So fine, but I went with 10% instead of his 15. I still think 10 is too high. He's got R&D of 8%. Right now, Tesla's company-wide R&D percentage is more like 5%, about 4.7% over the last 12 months. Okay. So, at a small fleet, those numbers might be reasonable, but at larger fleets, those numbers are crazy. And then he's got an infrastructure cost of 10% or $10,000 per vehicle per year. I don't know exactly what all that's for. I'm guessing that's charging infrastructure, cleaning, maybe there's parking lots that you have to, spend money on so the vehicles can park.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So to me, he's got a lot of expenses built in here at pretty high levels.
So the revenue per car up above, is that net of payment to Tesla? Or is this Tesla's own fleet?
Well, I'm guessing it's Tesla's own fleet, but looks like in partnership with somebody else.
Okay. Because
right, where Tesla's paying somebody, licensing fees to use Uber's platform or something.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why I had over here on my Tesla only.
Got it.
This is not the model where they're sharing revenue with individual
Somebody else. Okay.
owners.
All right.
Yeah. Anyway, he gets a net profit down to about 14,000-ish a year. 14% net profit. Contrast that with when Tesla sells a vehicle today, they make about 5,000 or so net profit per car.
But even if you went 10, or if you added FSD and said it was 17, you would still, under his notion, you would still be at matching that the first year.
Matching it the first year, and then that's reoccurring. Whereas when you sell a vehicle, it's a one-time thing.
Right.
So, yeah, even with this model, which seems very heavily loaded with expenses, it's very attractive.
Yeah.
Now, in my model, which excludes all the other revenue opportunities, factors in SG&A and R&D at higher than what I would assume going forward. I adopted his 10% infrastructure cost. I said, okay, fine, I'll go with that.
Yeah.
There's going to be some costs. Fine. $10,000 or $9,000 a vehicle per year. Fine. I'm still at a $40,000 profit and a 43% net margin.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, this is at utilization rates that are pretty low.
Right. So where do you think the cleaning kind of thing is in is that in the?
It's in the other expenses.
In the other. Okay. That's what
for me it is. I don't know if that's in his vehicle maintenance or in his other. It's not clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So then here's how it looks if I take out the licensing fees.
Okay.
His model then would work out to about a 29% net margin or a $30,000 profit per vehicle per year. So that's more reasonable. Right. And then here's the same thing, just looking at the cost per mile. So here's the revenue per mile is $1.76, gross profit of 91 cents, and so on all the way down. The vehicle is making about 24 cents per mile in net profit under his scenario. Under my scenario, using similar revenue numbers, a little bit lower, I get to net profit of 68 cents per mile. And I would argue that there's a lot of room here for Tesla to be more aggressive on pricing, right? And still make a lot of money.
Yeah, and this comes down to that argument that I've been having with lots of folks for a while now, and that is, does Tesla need to be lower priced in the beginning? Will they ever have to be lower priced than Uber and Lyft in order for this to work? I don't know. I don't think we have any clue. Maybe 10 years from now, I just don't know.
Yeah.
Under the Cathie Wood model, she figures that in order to and now also we're talking about United States. It'll never be $1.57 in China, for instance. But in the United States and Europe at $1.57, even maybe $2, which I think is Uber and Lyft, roughly. I'm not sure you have to be a nickel under them in order for this to work.
Right. The simple answer is that the market will tell you.
Yes.
If you price it too low, you're going to have so much demand
Yeah.
that wait times will be a problem.
Right.
So you have to price it appropriately so that the customer experience is acceptable.
Yep.
Right. That in the end is what tells them how to price it. If the demand happens to be through the roof, then the pricing goes up.
Yeah.
It's the old surge pricing for Uber. That's
Exactly.
That's as terrible as it is, that's a very effective way of getting supply in sync with demand.
Absolutely.
Right. So that's the answer, Randy. Supply and demand.
Yes. Which is why I think that they should start off with supervised rides immediately, so they can start figuring out what that really means.
Yeah. We will know whether that's the case in a few days.
Yes.
Okay, Randy, I need to ask you permission to rant. Can I rant on this show?
Of course. Of course.
All right. Here it comes. The PE ratio, Randy. It's as useful as Fruit Loops. Okay,
I've known a few.
Yeah. This is a post that I made, and I'll just kind of walk you through this. It's actually very simple.
Did this one do well?
Not as well as I wanted it to. This is something I think the world needs to understand.
Yes.
And until everybody stops using the PE ratio, it's my mission in life to educate everybody about how useless it is. All right. The PE ratio, just as a reminder, is simply the current stock price divided by 1 year's worth of earnings. And I say, hopefully you're looking forward, not backwards. If you're looking backwards, it's like driving a car looking in the rearview mirror. It
Right.
doesn't tell you anything about where you're going, it just tells you where you went.
Right.
So at least if you're looking at the PE ratio with earnings for the next 12 months, you're at least considering what may happen in the next 12 months. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But what about year 2, Randy? What about
Yeah.
year 3, year 4,
Yeah.
right? Do we just ignore what the earnings might be in those time periods? Now, most people ignore it because it's too hard. It's too hard to know how much Tesla and other companies are going to make in year 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Absolutely true.
Too much work. It's too many unknowns.
Yes.
So almost everybody focuses just on this year's earnings.
Mhm.
Maybe next if we're lucky.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like now people are focused on 2025, not just 2024's earnings. Okay.
Yes.
But what happens if the earnings over the next 12 months are temporarily depressed? Right? Like they were for NVIDIA before it took off.
Right.
Or the earnings are about to take off because the company has a new product, like NVIDIA did. They had kind of a double whammy. Their gaming revenue was down,
Mm-hmm.
and then they were about to come and do a whole new product cycle with the GPUs for AI. All right. So my rant is that the PE ratio basically is useless. And I compare it to Fruit Loops because thinking of Fruit Loops as nutrition is also pretty silly. Right? The PE ratio is an unhealthy shortcut to valuation. Shouldn't be a part of any financial valuation food group. It's unhelpful. It's incomplete. Stop using it. You're not doing yourself any service if you think in terms of PE ratio. Okay. The only time that the PE ratio is useful is if the future earnings of the company does not change.
Mm.
And then it becomes like a bond. And then actually you would flip the PE and calculate an earnings yield, just like you have a yield on a bond.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. And I point out here, no one says that Tesla's earnings yield is 1.1%. No one says that NVIDIA's earnings yield is 2.8%. And they don't say that because the earnings is not a static number. It's not like a bond. You're not getting a 2.8% yield on NVIDIA forever. Hopefully, you get more as the earnings grow. So, like a real nutritionist, I'm warning people, do not, use PE ratios.
And then we have another problem is that the multiple that people use is supposed to be somehow based, according to some systems, supposed to be somehow based on how fast the company is growing.
Yeah.
And so now you are taking into consideration 2 years out, 3 years out, et cetera. And all of that is, again, it's not exactly hocus pocus. I mean, I do it all the time. Did it with my own companies, do it with other companies when I'm trying to make a decision on investing. But it does end up being the more of that you try to bring into the one number, the one PE number, the less meaningful, I guess it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's a shortcut. It gets you to some basic understanding, perhaps, of where a company may be in a point in time. Maybe I'm getting a little bit too carried away when I say it's completely useless. Maybe it's just mostly useless.
Well, it would also, there's certain investors that when they're trying to, maybe they've got a basket of things that they're trying to evaluate, not just one. And when you talk about a shortcut, it could be that by eliminating everything that has a PE of over X or under X, Y.
Yeah.
Or something, only PEs within a range, it allows them to at least start putting into smaller baskets so they can, so that it's manageable.
And that's fine, but just know that there are certain situations, again, NVIDIA is a great example,
Right.
where there were times when the earnings were depressed, or just before, their revenues took off from selling GPUs, that the PE ratio looked very high.
Right.
Right. So some investors were sort of saying, oh, there's an opportunity. And other investors were saying it's already overpriced. The market's factored it in. And actually buying at that high PE would have been a brilliant investment move.
Right.
So you just have to be aware of that, because if you are using a shortcut, it's not going to be perfect.
Right.
In fact, it's very bad, actually. Anyway, end of rant, Randy.
Okay. End of rant. Okay.
This is another photo from my afternoon at the park with my truck.
Okay.
Again, I wasn't there all afternoon. I took these photos very quickly, so please don't, think that I spent all day at the park with my truck. But I did like how the sky kind of reflected off the side. I was pleased with my iPhone with this one.
Yeah. Quite.
Maybe if I cleaned it a little better, maybe it would have been even better.
Even better. Yeah.
All right. Recently we had some delivery numbers. Do you recall that, Randy?
Yeah, it's foggy, but yeah, yesterday, I think.
Yeah. So this was kind of funny. Amit says that the expected deliveries were 463,900, and the actual came in at 462,890, and the difference between those is 1010.
Do you need to put this into Grok and put in the two numbers and say, what would there be any kind of analysis we could do that would turn it into something useful? I don't know how.
Yeah. And then apply a PE ratio to that, Randy, and you get some other amazing number. Probably 420 or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yes.
So the only conclusion here is that Elon is playing 4D chess. Yeah. All right. Here's a visual of the quarterly earnings numbers. I'm not a big fan of focusing on quarterly deliveries.
Right.
This is actually production. We'll start with production first.
Okay.
Getting myself all confused here, but this is production. It was Tesla's third highest quarter ever for production.
Okay.
And yet it didn't meet expectations.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting. And I wrote a post actually yesterday called Disappointment Inc. And it's a fable about a company that always disappoints investors and yet over time builds something pretty big. And so my point is, it is possible for a Tesla to have disappointed every single quarter. And yet look what happens over time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is production. Here's the change in production, a pretty healthy quarter-to-quarter change. The top number here is the most recent quarter. Certainly there are quarters where the production goes down, but over time, they're increasing production quarter over quarter. And then here is the cumulative production. We're now approaching about 7 million vehicles. So we should get that announcement not too far from now in terms of 7 million's been produced if they decide to make an announcement.
Yeah.
And then on the delivery side, it was also Tesla's third best quarter for deliveries. Okay.
Yep.
And then the change in deliveries was slight positive quarter over quarter. And then here is the cumulative deliveries. We're now approaching 7 million. And we should hit that sometime this quarter. All right. Inventories. I calculate now that Tesla has 18 days of inventory.
Right.
And you might look at that and say, well, okay, that's still 18 days. That's a lot of vehicles sitting around. But you have to take into account the fact that when a vehicle gets produced, when it comes out the factory door, it doesn't instantly get delivered. There's a time lag. It's got to go on a train, a truck, some cases ships to get to the end customer. And so I calculate what I call a true inventory day, which factors out the number of transport days. And I calculated that across Tesla's business, they have on average about 18 days of transport to get a vehicle from the factory once it's produced into the customer's hands.
Makes sense.
So effectively, the true inventory days, which would show up here as green, are 0 right now. So talk about running a lean, mean ship.
Yeah.
Now, there clearly are some vehicles in inventory, and there are other vehicles where there's a bit of a backlog. This is on average, right? But that's pretty impressive, in my opinion. Now, maybe my numbers are a little bit off. Maybe they actually have a couple of days of inventory. Fine. It's still extremely low, particularly if you compare it to any other auto OEM in the world.
Sure.
Okay. So things look really good on that front. And if I was Tesla and if I was about to introduce some new models, I would want to keep inventories as low as possible.
Sure. Especially on those that are going to be changed.
Right. Or vehicles that might compete with the newer ones. And the newer ones, maybe if they're lower priced, then that hurts the sales of, let's say, like Model 3, for example.
Right.
Okay. All right. Another bright spot in the delivery report was storage deployed. This was the second best quarter ever. And a lot of people now are anchoring on this quarter, which was Q2, and comparing it and saying, oh my gosh, it went down.
Right.
This is terrible. But actually, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think a better way to look at this is on a cumulative basis. This is one of the prettiest charts you'll ever see.
Yeah.
In terms of progress. And then if you look at trailing 12 months, we have about 24 gigawatt hours of storage produced in the last 12 months.
Or deployed.
Deployed, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Deployed. Yeah.
In fact, the evidence would suggest that we have a lot more produced than deployed, and so maybe we need to persuade Elon to give us production numbers on that too.
That would be interesting, actually, wouldn't it, to have those two data points? Yes, you can kind of see a backlog that's waiting to be. Yeah, of course, there'd be people that would be complaining, "Oh my gosh, look at the inventory storage; they're not selling." Yeah, we'd have all those issues again.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, the other thing too to keep in mind is this is energy storage deployed over the last 12 months versus the factory capacity at Lathrop plus the Powerwall capacity.
Right.
Lathrop's capacity is 40 gigawatt hours. Powerwall's about 10. So we're about 50 on that. And so you can see that, to your point, there's a serious lag between what's deployed and where the capacity is. Now, Lathrop may not yet be running at full capacity, but it may be a lot closer to that than we realize. Yeah. And then, of course,
I think,
add
I
in
think,
Shing.
I think people, including me, think it's at full capacity, and so might be a little bit surprised that the deployments aren't stronger.
Yeah. It's just going to take time. We've heard about all these problems, with connecting these
Right.
megapacks to the grid and so on. It's just a laggy business. Yeah. But good things are happening there. The trajectory is pointing the right way for sure.
Mhm.
These were AJ's comments after the report yesterday. Deliveries came in 3.5% below his estimate. Deployments came just 1.4% below his estimate. Everybody's talking about the low other models, which looks low given the expected ramp in Cybertruck. He's suggesting that Cybertruck ramp is slower than expected, or the sales of S and X have decreased further. I think it's probably the latter, that S and
Mhm.
X
Mhm.
have seen weakness. He said today that he doesn't think that Tesla should stop selling S and X. Those lines have basically been depreciated and paid for. If there's demand, just continue to produce them. They're fairly profitable vehicles. So anyway, he's reasonably satisfied with the result. All right. I did a calculation yesterday to figure out how many vehicles Tesla would have to sell in the fourth quarter in order to match the 1.808 million vehicles they delivered last year. And that number is 514,925.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Which would be a record quarter for deliveries.
By a lot.
Well, it sounds like a lot, but when you dig into this,
Uh-huh.
when you look at the change in the third quarter to the fourth quarter, it's over the last 4 years.
Right.
In 2021, they delivered 241,000 in the third quarter, and
Ah,
then 308 in the fourth.
yeah.
And then 2022, 344 to 405. Last year, 435 to 484. And so from this year to go from 462 to 514, that is only a 52,000 unit increase.
Hmm.
And there have been two out of the last 4 years where they increased it by 67 or 61,000
Yeah.
quarter to quarter.
And even in 2023, which is kind of a soft year, was still 49, 48. So, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in my book, there's a high likelihood of this.
Hmm.
Now, we've got the hurricane in the US here that's going to hurt that.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the port strikes that could interrupt this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not at the beginning of the quarter, maybe towards the end, if it's, we'll see what kind of disruptions come. On the positive side, we've got stimulus in China.
Right.
On the unknown side, we've got weakness in Europe. Does that persist? Does that pick up in the fourth quarter? I don't know if we know.
And some discussions at this point about new stimulus coming for Europe.
Yeah. And is it
Right.
too little, too late for the fourth quarter?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
So, I think it could be close. And, to me, it doesn't really matter, but it's certainly achievable.
Yes.
It's a mistake to just look
Right.
at
Right.
this company on a quarterly basis. But for those that do, I think there's hope that Tesla can achieve that goal, at least matching last year's number or even being slightly ahead of it.
Yeah.
It's still a busted growth story, though, Randy.
It is. Well, and on the energy deployments, same story. If they
Yeah.
had if the difference between last quarter and this quarter is sitting in the lots and on barges on the way to locations,
Yeah.
it could very well be that we would have a bigger number in the fourth quarter than we did in the second quarter. So hard to
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
It's hard to know. Yep. And then to your point about energy, the way I like to think about Tesla is in this way, in bought equivalents.
But it's right. Yeah.
Okay, so autos over the last 12 months, the auto sales, deliveries, it's equivalent to 151 gigawatt hours of energy. Okay, that's now 87% of the company's total energy delivered.
I see. Okay.
The energy business is 24 gigawatt hours, which is now 13% of the total. Okay, from an energy standpoint.
Yeah.
Okay, not revenues, but energy. And so put that in bought equivalents. Bots have a 2.3 kilowatt hour battery. Tesla has effectively made about 76 million bots. Now, of course, they haven't, but what I'm saying here is that this is what they've made in terms of bot equivalent. I think it's an interesting way to think about it.
Yeah.
Right? If they were to say, okay, forget autos, forget energy
Yeah.
storage,
Yeah.
we're going all in on bots, the batteries that's gone into the products of the last 12 months, they could have made 76 million.
Yeah.
Now, I would actually argue that making bots would actually be easier than making vehicles
Oh, yeah.
and megapacks. And in fact, the bots could make themselves. So
Right.
it may be, you might be able to make twice as many bots or something like that, right? So just to get people to start thinking about Tesla as a bot company, they're already at massive scale in terms of their capability, potentially to make bots. Not that these factories can be flipped over and they can make bots tomorrow at this level. Not suggesting that, but just in terms of bot equivalence.
Okay.
So, for what that's worth, some people will dismiss it and others will say that's interesting.
Yeah, or brilliant even, because
Yep.
there's a company. It's called Brilliant something. I'm not sure exactly.
That's right.
A Vice or something.
Brilliant Advice, I think, is the name of the operation. Yeah. Again, here's my Cybertruck at the park, Randy. It was so sunny and so brilliant, I had to change this to black and white.
Yeah, yeah. Old school.
Old school.
Yeah.
All right.
Or artistic.
Yep. All right, we're getting there. I'm sorry, we're just a few more slides left. This is an interesting one from AJ, talking about General Motors' global market share.
Wow.
And he's asking, can anyone see a trend in these numbers? And for those that can't see the screen right now, the vehicle sales for GM as a percent of the global market share has gone from 11.35% in 2014 down to about 6.6%, 6.7% this year. And that's a pretty steady line going down there.
A pretty steady line.
Yeah, it'd be hard pressed to say, oh, that's temporary. This decline is temporary. It looks like a pretty good trend.
Wow.
So in my snarky way, I added this to the comments on this post. I said, it turns out you don't need to make EVs after all. Just run the company into the ground. Mary is doing her part to make the world emissions free. She should be handsomely rewarded for her efforts. And AJ responded and said, true, no auto CEO has done more for the climate than Mary Barra by making GM selling so many fewer vehicles. Biden was right after all, Mary led.
Ooh, that is a little snarky.
Yeah.
But
see the fun that we have on X. It's great.
Yeah. Well, a lot of those cars that aren't being sold are being replaced by BEVs in China. So yeah, maybe so.
Yeah. Put this into the hopeful category. Alex is talking about a solar roof installation in Texas.
Yeah.
Of this house, and I'll share some images of this in a second, but it has a hail rating, class 4, which is the highest rating, has a wind rating class F, which is the highest rating, has a fire rating of class A, which is the highest rating, and there's a warranty of 25 years. How and why Tesla's solar business hasn't taken off is puzzling. I think we all wish it would, and maybe one day it will. But here are some images of the roof of this house. It looks pretty sharp. Now, you'll never really see it from this angle. You'll see it from the ground a little differently than this. But it does look pretty nice.
Yeah.
So hopefully the birds will appreciate it. All right, here's my truck sitting in my garage. And I was very excited this week because I got a download of FSD on my Cybertruck.
Yeah.
And it was just one day before when Omar, Chuck Cook, and maybe one other person that I know of got their download. And so I was next on the list, it appeared. And so I rushed out and I've done some drives. And I found an interesting challenge for the Cybertruck here in Sarasota.
Okay.
For people that are familiar with this area, this will look very familiar. This is the spaghetti crossing here at I-75 and the University Mall.
Hmm.
This pile of dirt right here is actually where Tesla's new service center is. That has now been built, and for some reason Google doesn't yet show it on here, but the Tesla sales and service center is right here. Very prominent location as you're coming down I-75. Anyway, I was driving the truck in FSD coming off of 75 and trying to navigate into the mall, which is right here. And I thought this would be a good test because there are 2 lanes that exit off I-75 that branch out into 5 lanes. 2 turn left and 3 turn right. Branches onto a 5-lane road, which becomes an 8-lane road. 3 of which lanes turn left into the mall. Okay, and then it has to navigate this and get into the right, left 2-most lanes in order to make the left turn into the mall. So there were 2 difficult left-hand turns that were challenging. And I got to say, the truck did an amazing job. It handled this in a way that I wouldn't have. Both positive and negative. It didn't do a good job of planning ahead and putting itself in the right lane. But even though it found itself in the wrong lane, for example, it found itself in the rightmost lane here of the 3 turning lanes.
Right.
The worst place to be.
Right.
Because now you have to go across eventually 8 lanes of traffic to get to the other side.
Yeah.
Right. And everybody's trying to gun for these turning lanes. And so good thing the truck can accelerate. It was able to do that.
Wow.
So this is kind of a good testing ground for me, I think, for the truck to take this periodically and see how it navigates this. I've done it a couple times now. When I went back at night with very few cars, it made some good lane choices. But when it was very busy, it was in my opinion, in the completely the wrong lanes every time.
But
I didn't have to disengage. It made it through just fine.
Wow.
Yeah.
You managed to do some aggressive or intelligent merges.
Both, yes. It accelerated in front of other vehicles when it needed to change lanes.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow.
So I'm calling this the Sarasota Sunshine Shuffle.
Okay.
So I may report on this periodically to let you know how it goes.
All right, good.
And then I have another FSD test coming up, this one on the highway.
Wow.
And as you may know, the Cybertruck is one of the first vehicles to get the end-to-end FSD, end-to-end neural network FSD on the truck, right?
Yes.
So I have a 3,124 mile trip coming up. That's one way. I'll be coming back as well.
Yeah. Wow.
From Sarasota to Calgary, Canada. So I'll be able to report to you after many, many thousands of miles how FSD performs on the highway.
Is this a family vacation or is this a business trip or what are you doing?
It's family related, yes.
Okay.
My mother lives in Calgary.
Okay.
Yep. So I'm going up to see her. But it'll give me a great opportunity to really put FSD to the test on the highway.
Boy, you're right.
And then last but not least, apparently, Randy, if you put fins or a spoiler on the back of your Cybertruck, you can really make it go fast. I haven't done this. This is not my truck. This is a truck in California.
Wow.
But, you know, I say that it's a truck that drives like a sports car, and then this owner has taken that to heart and really turned it into a sports car.
Holy cow. That's pretty wild.
So that brings our roundup of things to an end. And next week we have something interesting happening. I forget what it is.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, that's going to be yeah. Now, are you going to be in California? Are you no?
Now, if I got an invite, I would drive out there and lengthen my 3,100 mile trip to 4,000 some miles. But I'm one of those few people that hasn't seemed to receive an invite.
Yeah, I know, me either. And I live here. I'm just down the street.
Right.
So, it would be so easy. I'm going over anyway. I'll go to the pre-parties or the after parties or whatever. But yeah, lovely if somebody's out there and still got some way to get me in, that would be phenomenal.
I would love to go as well, and I would happily lengthen my trip to be there.
Yeah.
But so far, yeah. But I I don't bemoan the people that did get tickets. I'm very happy for them, and I hope they have a great time. It's going to be awesome.
When do you go to Calgary?
I'll be leaving here October 15th,
And
unless I'm heading out to LA earlier. Yeah.
yeah, unless, okay. And will that get you out of there in time to avoid snow, or will you get to test your Cybertruck in the snow as well?
Well, I don't know. And certainly going up through Colorado and Wyoming and Montana, I guess we'll see, including Alberta. And if I don't find snow, I may have to look for it
Look for it. Yeah, there you go.
because I don't know that I've seen too many photos of Cybertruck in the snow yet.
That's right. That's right. You could have a whole bunch of fun pictures. Now, you
Yeah.
planning to continue to regale us on Thursdays during your trip?
We'll have to see if that is possible. It may be a challenge,
Okay.
but I did invest in Starlink Mini.
Oh, nice.
So I may be able to come to you live from wherever location I'm at.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I probably won't have any slides to talk about, so that it'll be a different show.
Different show. All right, let's see. What else? Is there anything else that we should talk about today? The stock has been a little bit under the weather the last couple of days. I was kind of expecting it maybe to rebound today, but it hasn't. We're down 662 as we're wrapping up here.
Good.
Good. Providing buying opportunities for many.
Precisely.
Precisely. So those of you who have dry powder, this is not investment advice. But I would say that many people don't think it's going to go much lower, although it just did. It's now down 7. So there you go.
Yeah, no, I think you have to be humble and say it can go quite a bit lower if it wants to. And that would be perfectly normal and perfectly okay.
Yeah.
The people that tend to worry about the stock price are those that have short-term trading
Yes.
strategies in place. And if I had a short-term strategy, I'd be worried about that too.
Or maybe not. You might be going, oh boy, I'm gonna, you could be like, I'm always forgetting the name of his, the one that who does all the short-term trading on X. Is the name escapes me for a minute. He's got a bowl of M&Ms as his icon.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, he's in and out every day. And right now I would think I know that he bought yesterday and did very well,
Mm-hmm.
picking up a little uptick.
Good for him.
So
Yep.
I'm guessing he's probably buying right now as well. Now we're down 733 just in the few seconds here that we've been watching. What's going on?
We need to stop talking about it.
Yes, we do. All right. So do you, I know you don't do short term, but just in general, having analyzed this over the years, are we gonna turn around and have some FOMO before the show?
I think that's highly likely. And I would also expect a potential sell-off after the event.
So I have people speculating that if we do get a date certain for supervised driving,
Yeah,
stock will go up after the show. Is that?
I think that's highly likely because I don't know that any analysts have any of that modeled in right now. And I think when they do model something in, like we saw with Adam Jonas today, that it gets them to some pretty exciting numbers, even if their expectations are low.
Right.
Right. I mean, for all the holes that we poked in Adam's model, you would still look at that and say, "Oh, that's pretty exciting."
Yeah, the holes that I would poke in his model. Now that's a fleet-based model. You would think the expenses would be less than a home-based model where I might own 1 or 2 or 3.
Yeah.
But the numbers for somebody that owns 1 or 2 or 3, some of the numbers that were 2 or 3 thousand a year would seem to me to be 0 or $5. I mean, what's the SG&A if you're running 3 of them out of your home? I mean,
Exactly.
the cost of my I don't know what the SG&A would be if I'm running it.
I don't think you'd worry about it. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
No, yeah.
So anyway, be interested to see if we get any kind of modeling on next Thursday, and be interesting also, of course, to see if we get a date certain. That's the number one thing I'm hoping for. We know we're going to get a product. They're going to show us a product, that's for sure. So
Yeah.
that's not a speculation. Whether it's clever, cute, interesting, fun, I have high expectations that it will be, because we got Franz, we got Elon. They're both brilliant at this kind of stuff. So it doesn't leave a lot of room for speculation, but the speculation would be on one more thing, speculation, and on whether there's a date certain.
Yeah, I think we all have high hopes for the event, and as we saw last week when we went through this, that the expectations are all over the place
Right.
for what people expect to see and want to see.
Mhm.
And so just because of that, you're going to have a lot of people that are disappointed.
Yeah.
Because there's no way that they can cover all those items, right? It's just not going to happen. So it's just a question of, how does that weigh in the balance? But I think you're right. If there's a start date, if it's very clear about how the economic model looks, then that will allow people to model it and get excited about it. Absent that, then it just continues to be one more thing that's into the future.
Right.
Right. And Tesla will get there. But unless we have a date, then the getting there is just up in the air, and everybody says, "Well, just ignore it for now. We'll focus on quarterly deliveries again." Right? Until we have something else that we can actually focus on, then all we have left is quarterly deliveries.
Right. Right. And new product, additional new product, the 2.5 and the some people are even talking about the Roadster again. We got the 2.5. We've eventually got the 3.0, maybe, which I still don't know if it's a separate vehicle or just a revised way of manufacturing the same vehicle, or some combination of the above. So so many things yet to learn. But 2025 is going to be a crazy, crazy year in terms of the growth.
It's also interesting too, Randy. You think about new models, and everybody wants new models, and I get it. I understand why. But from a financial perspective, like the Cybertruck has been a negative. It's been a drag on the company's earnings.
Right.
Right. In the short term, while it ramps, just like every other vehicle was.
Right.
And so, let's say we get a bunch of new models, then we may have a significant drag on the company's earnings.
Yes.
And so that's also one of those things where you need to be, you need to understand what's really going on. Right. I can see 6 months from now or 9 months from now or a year from now, people are saying, "Oh, they introduced all these new models. I see them, but you know what? Their earnings are not going anywhere."
Right.
What's going on? Right. There'll be some confusion about all that.
Sure.
And then it's, maybe a year after that things really start to take off.
Yes, I've always said 2026.
Yeah.
It's always been my year, the year when everything comes together. And that was before we knew about some of the things that are going to be coming together. But 2026 to me is the year. And my speculation is that the market will begin to understand what a big deal that is by late 2025. So that's why I still have my 700 price target for next year.
I would say mid 2025 that will come more into focus for people. As a lot of investment shops begin to look at 2026 earnings expectations.
Right.
Because at that point, 2025 is kind of in the bag. Might be a quarter or two of earnings left. Fine. They're going to look out beyond that. Right. Because the PE ratio is 1 year.
Right.
They want to look at least a year out. So that forces them to look into 2026. So yeah, it could be, could be an interesting struggle between now and then.
And the other catalyst that's part of that is actual rubber on the road robotaxis for a quarter. If we, it's one thing to say, here is the business plan for an individual or a business plan for a fleet in terms of what that fleet's going to make or what that individual is going to make by putting their car out on the streets. It's another thing to actually have a quarter of activity where now you can start to do better models and better projections based on what you're seeing for the fleet owners as well as for the company. And then, so I think that's another huge catalyst is at some point, it may not take a quarter, but at some point, somebody is going to report in a way that's believable about what it means for the owners and what it means for Tesla.
Yep. And then we're going to have that wonderful game where Tesla doesn't meet people's expectations on the operating metrics of the Robotaxi network,
Right. Or they do.
or they do.
Yeah.
But the
But-
nature of this quarterly game is that they will miss expectations
For somebody.
more than half the time.
Right. Yeah, actually, there's one of the best books I've ever read, and only about 100 other people have read it. It was, written by a local author who'd never spent the money or time to get the thing really out there. But the title of the book says it all: Expectations Ruin Relationships. Yeah, and I think that's true for, husbands and wives, children and parents, but also for companies as they and CEOs as they try to navigate the business waters and the stock and stock expectations in particular. Anyway, thank you as always for joining me and bringing all these phenomenal. Now you're going to become known for your memes, known for your photography, in addition to your slideshows.
Yeah, scary thought. Scary thought. Hopefully, one of those things is reasonable. Just a parting thought for you, though.
Absolutely.
Is imagine a world where the SEC outlawed guidance and what that would look like. Right? All companies could do is report their financials
and not give any guidance at all.
And not give any guidance about anything to do with anything in the future.
Wow. Well, then the speculators would do it.
Yeah.
It'd give us all, you and I would have more reasons to be doing YouTube videos.
I suppose it's a bit like the Robotaxi event where there's been no guidance given other than it's going to be amazing.
Yes, and there might be McDonald's involved.
Who knows? There's going to have to be now. I think they may be doing a deal as we speak.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing was going to happen, but now
they have to meet expectations now. Everybody wants to see a McDonald's deal. If they don't, the event will be a disaster.
Oh man, that's great. Yeah, so everything else is perfect. They give us a date by which they give us all the great cars. Everything's wonderful, but no McDonald's, and so the stock goes down.
Where's my fries? Thanks, Randy.
Okay, Cern, it's been great. And for all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.